Hello.
What do you want, Ernie? You're good.
Yeah, where are we holding? Do you remember?
Okay, let's,
I think one, that's not that.
The cherry one. But you have first.
I think we're on 134.
Okay.
Hi, Yaakov, good to see you.
Likewise, thank you.
There's Walter, there's Harold. Okay. So we've been dealing with lush, kneading,
Yeah.
mixing, things like that. Okay, here is Mario. Okay. Saul is here. Okay, so 134. How can we do some lush activities by Shinui? So under certain circumstances, preparing food mixtures on Shabbos may be permitted if one employs one or more Shinuyim, with changes in the normal method. Adding the ingredients in unusual order, mixing only small amounts, stirring the mixture in an unusual manner. We went through that already. And we've quoted sources from the Gemara for changing the usual order and for preparing mixtures in small amounts. There's also the possibility of stirring in an unusual manner that has sources too. The Gemara Masechta Shabbos permits mixing animal food using alternate strokes in different directions or by pouring into another vessel. Levi braid Ravuna Barchia, Levi the son of Ravuna Barchia, Ashkache legavla de Beinashia de Kagavel v'sapi leilatori. The person who was the job was to knead in his parents' home. He was kneading animal food on Shabbos and feeding it to the ox. Batashpei. Levi kicked him so that the person would stop doing it. Asavu ashkechei. So Levi's father found him. Your mother's father said in the name of Rav, Umanu Rav Yirmiyah bar Ava, that goivlin, that you're allowed to do this kind of kneading. When if you do it in a change. Heichi mishani, Rav Yirmiyah bar Shalmei mishmei Abayis shesi va'eriv. This way and that way. Shesi va'eriv is like a cross, or, horizontal and then longitudinal. I v'halom ha'ariv shapir. But that doesn't mix things well. I mean, you mix by doing this, by turning. Well, you could pour from one vessel into another vessel. That mixes things, and that's also a shinui. Another Gemara on Masechta Shabbos Kuf Mem, Amar Mazurtu Lesil Chazak Cholani Shmaitza. The halacha is not like these. Mustard that was needed before Shabbos. Lemachran, Shabbos itself, mamchu ben biyad ben bekli. You can sort of dissolve it by hand or in a vessel. V'nosin l'sochu dvash. You can pour honey in it. V'lo yitraf ela ma'arev. You can't beat it. You can stir it gently. And the Shulchan Aruch paskins, chardal shaloshim erev Shabbos. Let's say you needed mustard erev Shabbos. L'machar yachol arvo. You can mix into the mustard hein biyad, both by pouring hein bekli, or with another vessel. V'noislan sochot vash. You could pour honey into it. V'lo yitrof la'arva b'koach. You should not beat it forcefully. Elam arva mat, just do it gently. And the Mishnah Berurah explains that this method of preparing mixture is considered a shinui and is therefore permitted, even when no external liquid was added before Shabbos. So yachol arvo, meaning on Shabbos, b'mayim o b'yayin, with water or wine. Afilu lo nisarv mayim b'chardal kodem Shabbos, even if the water wasn't put in before Shabbos. V'nila shachadal rak mitamtzis lachuta. The kneading occurs by pouring something liquid into it. Afilu hachi shari, but it's permitted. Achshav la'arv bo amashka, to put this liquid in. Da'yadeh nesina l'chashav lisha, l'dei azuat she'igaflo. It's not considered lisha, but just pouring the liquid in, unless you actually need it. V'adai, the hitul la'ariv ben biyad ben b'kli, the fact that you can sort of do a mixture, whether with your hand or with a kli, zayin gibul b'zeh. It's not considered kneading. Because the main way of kneading mustard or watercress or garlic, by beating it forcibly. You have to use strength. Here you do it gently. That's why the Shulchan Aruch says just a little by little. The Bir Alocha, who is the Chafetz Chaim also, explains that this explanation is an accurate representation of the view of the Shulchan Aruch. But he questions how this small alteration seemingly permits a biblical violation of Lash. He concludes that contrary to the view of the Shulchan Aruch, the correct explanation of the Gemara is that this leniency only applies to mustard that had already been fully kneaded before Shabbos. So the Bir Alocha explains that when the Shulchan Aruch permitted you to mix it, Yachol Arvo, and Beis Yosef, right? Rav Yosef Karo's commentary on the Tur, Ba'orach the Muchach, who goes at length to prove B'pshitus Umashma Dafilu Lasos B'Shabbos B'Layla Ava Hitiru Gamkein, that if even if you make a thick mixture on Shabbos, it's permitted because you didn't beat it forcibly. She'ein Torah B'Koach, the Emet Tzarchiyim Gadol B'Zeh. The Mishnah Berurah is bothered by that. Hechi tiru Chazal, etzma gibel. How did Chazal permit you to knead? Do isur deraisa. Yedei shinu amuad. A little bit of shinu that you don't do it forcibly, right? The Hainu Shena Torah B'Koach. The Rambam in Perek Chav Beis mashma the imiyatrof lo havi ki isur drabanan. Even if you did beat forcibly, it would only be an isur drabanan. It's considered rabbinic Shabbos restrictions, not midoraisa, which he finds problematic. Then he has a third problem. The Gemara starts off by talking about mustard that was already kneaded. How can you knead without fluid? That is sort of, it was kneaded with its own natural moisture. It's impossible. You can't knead without more moisture. If I wasn't afraid, says the Bir Alocha, all of this is talking, the mustard had to be fully kneaded before Shabbos. And now on Shabbos, now you're doing it again with a spoon. So it's similar. That's the rabbinic prohibition. Now, the Orchos Shabbos, who is an Achron, a contemporary Achron, summarizes the leniencies that we have learned regarding preparing food mixtures with a shinui. So we'll see some, and then we go on into practical examples, which are going to be very familiar for us. Let's first learn the Orchos Shabbos. Lisha b'shesiver. One leniency was to knead by doing to and fro, right? Like making a cross. This way, and then this way. We don't we don't use a spoon and in a circular manner, right? Yachnis is a kaf, l'tocha taruvis. You put the spoon in the mixture. V'yavir to pamachas shesi. You do like this one time. Upamachas arev, the opposite. V'yotzis a kaf ben shes, and you take it out. And the v'yachol achzor lapulus ukama v'kama pam. You could repeat that action multiple times. The other leniency was lisha matmat. Hainu shemachal asher rigulus lachinu b'kamus meruba. Let's say normally you would produce a large quantity. The shinui is yolosh mimena b'chol pam kama muetas. You just do little bit at a time. Omnam lo nemar heter zeh, but that leniency is only given to us. Ba'ofen shadavar bor sheyeshinu gomer b'lisha muetasu. Unless you also do a shinu in the lisha. Because of a chazanish, she'ein la'atir lisa kemach matzah b'shinu shel ma'at. You can't knead dough making matzah even with a little shinui. You can't really say, oh, we only knead dough when you're making a lot of it. So mitam zeh gam sugi blila, mixing asher b'mosa chol regilim lachim manus ketonos. Let's say during the week you would mix small amounts. Ein heter lachinam b'kamus hanehuga b'mosa chol. You'd have to make much smaller portions on Shabbos. The Orcha Shabbos concludes Yesh Leida, Sheshinum Elim are speaking Kolecha B'fnei Atzmo. Each of these Shinuim suffice for themselves. Ve'ein tzarach lasos shnei shrim gam yachad. You don't have to use Shesi ve'erev plus the smaller amounts. Either one will do. So if you have a large amount, you should do Shesi ve'erev. If you can make small amounts, you can get away with making small amounts.
Would you turn the vessel 45 degrees and then do the same thing? You're actually getting a new section of it to.
I would say that would agree. That would be like Shesi ve'erev. Saul asked, because the way was described here is you would put a spoon and you do in one direction, and then you take the spoon and do in the other direction, and then come out, and then you could do it again. Saul asked, let's say you do in one direction, you turn the kli, and then you do the same direction. I would say that's the same thing. That would be Shesi ve'erev. I wouldn't see that would be different. That's just a different way of doing it. You're even doing less of an action because you're always going in the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
So let's hear some other examples of lash in daily life and how contemporary poskim rule. So we saw in the Gemara that one may mix mustard with honey on Shabbos, but you shouldn't beat it forcefully. So due to the difficulty in determining what is considered beating forcefully, Rav Neuwirth in the Shmir Shabbos Kilchasa recommends that one who wishes to make mayonnaise should do so before Shabbos. He takes the easy way out. He just says, don't do it. Shabbos asur lachin mayonnaise samich. The spread, mayonnaise, you can't prepare it. The gamba shir le mayonnaise nazil, the first one is talking about a thick mayonnaise. Now, if you're making liquid, you have to make that before Shabbos. Shlomo Zalman is quoted as questioning whether it may even be permitted to beat forcefully as long as the mixture is not thick. Rav Avadia Yosef writes that you can make mayonnaise on Shabbos, provided that this is done immediately before the meal and what does not beat the mixture forcefully. Mutter lasos mayonnaise b'Shabbos. Hainu shema arvin beitzim, right? You take eggs, v'shemen oil, v'chardal mustard, v'sukar, sugar, uktzas melach, and salt. So he's giving us the
Ingredients, right?
the recipe of making mayonnaise. Uvitnaisha osel das lechol alter. Number one, you have to make it right before you eat. Bosa suda v'gam lo yitrof lavram b'koach. You should stir it gently with a spoon, not do it too forcibly, and that avoids the lash problem. What about preparing baby food? We already saw above that the Chazon Ish permits preparing even a thick food mixture for a baby, provided that one stirs gently. and the ingredients do not include pieces of bread or the like that stick together. And the Orcha Shabbos provides other applications of that leniency. Preparing baby food, you could be lenient. Where they said there is no Torah prohibition by adding water to flour. So therefore you can prepare even thick mixtures as long as you change the standard kneading mechanism, either by doing it back and forth, right? Let's say you're mixing orange juice into crushed banana, or crushed apple. You want to feed a child. You should change how you mix it. Like we said, back and forth. Or your arved's bow, do it without a kli, do it with your finger. V'ma'ariv b'taruvis zu gam piruri biscuit or uga. He says if you put in biscuits or cake, because of chaznish ish yasa shashina begivul dafka yedei gibul shasiv erev v'lo yedei givul batzut. Then you should do the back and forth, to and fro mixture, not with your finger. V'nir du adinim noisim b'taruvis gavina yasa shashina yedei shasiv. If you put cheese in, again, you should use the alternate strokes, shinui. When preparing a thin mixture, switching the usual order of adding the ingredients is sufficient. We learned that last week, that if normally you add this ingredient first and the second ingredient second, you just switch it on Shabbos, and that's enough of a shinui. When preparing powdered milk, either regular milk powder or formula milk powder with water, the Shmir Shabbos Kolchosa writes that no shinu is required. That mixture is liquid. And we've been dealing only with things that are thicker, not liquid. Right? Habalachin chalav me'avkat chalav from milk powder, regila, or me'avkat chalav miyuchad l'tinokot, or, the formula. You're going to avkat materna, must be a Hebrew brand. Mikevan, because sha'avkut elu, the thickness is Nimasot b'mayim, it easily dissolves in water. V'ataruvet nozlit, and it's a liquid. It pours easily. Muter lasoso. K'mon sheragiv mosachol bikfuf l'denei bishul. These powders dissolve in water, and the mixture is liquid. It's not a problem. Rabben Sion Abba Shaul agrees with this ruling, but nevertheless suggests taking the extra precaution of adding a significant amount of water without delay to avoid any possibility of a solid mixture forming that could end up being a lash problem, right? If you're adding water to the powder, so it doesn't immediately dissolve. It does dissolve. You're not kneading it. So there's no lash. You don't have to change the order. B'tshuvas hakodesh. Chen koz v'chozon ish b'simen nun ches ayin shami kol mokom tov shlo yishpoch b'tchilim. Don't start off when you're making that mixture with dumping a small amount of water. El yishpoch miyad mayim b'kamos meruba yoser ma'avka. You should put a lot of water in so it doesn't allow it to become thick. Right? Im nemar sheyesh gam avka mishum lash kivin sheshev echar b'mayim v'kol nas dalil. Everything becomes dissolved right away. Ein b'zeh klal mishum lash. Based on the same logic, one may also prepare chocolate milk on Shabbos using Nestle's chocolate powder or cocoa, as noted by David Ribiat. Right? This Dover Nozel, it's perfectly permissible to mix cocoa with milk or drink powders into water, because the result in all these cases is a thin liquid, which is not a Mrabanan Lash mixture. Growing up, I don't even remember this shaila ever came up. We made chocolate milk on Shabbos without any question. Obviously, we weren't learning correctly, or we were ignorant of this halacha. Similarly, it is permitted to make, they say it's not a problem to make the Nestle's quick, right? Similarly, it's permitted to make coffee or tea. I would think, therefore, if you use Bosco liquid, right, powder, adding powder to water is a problem. That's lash, right? Lash is when you're making dough, when you start with flour and water. But adding a liquid to a liquid, that would not be a problem, right? He says it's permitted to make coffee or tea from instant tea powder as long as one avoids the Melacha of Bishul, right? One must be careful to add a large amount of water together with the powder to prevent the creation of a mixture that could qualify as lush. Rav Rivit writes this himself as well with respect to powdered milk in the next paragraph. What he means by Bishul, remember we Kli Rishon, Kli Sheni, Kli Shlishi, all of those things that we learned about when we learned Bishul. Well, who prepares tchina here in Los Angeles? Usually buy tchina, but in Israel they make tchina. So they're talking about preparing tchina on Shabbos. The Melacha of Lash involves binding substance together using liquid. Many people in Israel prepare tchina, a paste made from sesame seeds, known in English as tchini, by adding water to the liquid paste to make it ready to eat. Is this lash? Since it involves the opposite process of making a thick substance thinner, you would think that it would be less problematic, right? You're taking this paste, by adding water, you make it thinner. So, l'chora, that should be less of a problem. The Shmir Shabbos Kilchosa writes that one may not prepare tchina in the usual manner, as when doing so, the mixture first becomes thicker, only subsequently becomes thinner. So one who needs to prepare tchina on Shabbos should therefore pour in all the liquid in one go in order to avoid producing an initial thick mixture. Ein la'aktzif b'Shabbos tchina golemit. You shouldn't whip raw tchina. Umachal dalil shel kitniot. It's made from legumes. Shaydeshim ravim bomayim. Right, by mixing water, sharmashkim uvochshim osam, and you stir it. Nase ava ki isa salechem. It can become thick, like dough of bread. Asrlasus came. Even though your kavana, by mixing it a lot, it's going to become liquidy, but since it goes through a phase of thickness, that's problematic. Ulam, im yish b'shas hatzorach, im yishpoch mitchilat kol hamashkim. If you dump all the fluid in there, shlot titava bichlal, never becomes thick, bli la'ava, then mutter im yishane b'ofen abchisha, if you stir in a different way. Aval im kvar hechin mibod yom tchina. If already from Friday you made tchina, and there's water there, vihi raka, and it's soft, and now you want to add water or lemon juice, mutter losif b'mayim omitz, limon k'dei lidlad yoser, can make it thinner. Umutter lavav, and you can mix that. Rav Moshe Levi in the Menucha Sava rules in accordance with the lenient opinion, provided one prepares the tchina immediately before eating, and you mix it gently, like the way Rav Ovadia Yosef said about the mayonnaise. Mutter tchina b'Shabbos, you can prepare it on Shabbos. They also put mayim v'limon, adding water and lemon, me'at melach, with salt, al gabi tchina golmit, which is the tchina paste, which you obtain from grinding the sesame seeds. That obviously you cannot do on Shabbos. You can't grind the sesame seeds. We'll see where that comes from, but that's clearly grinding. Tchina, it's going to be a malacha, tchina. Kvar b'beis hacharoshes, I guess you buy that from the factory, v'nasas bli la'ava, that becomes thick, but now you add the water and the lemon juice, becomes thinner. As long as bitnai she has a kain samach l'suda mamish, when you prepare the tchina, you shouldn't do it like in the morning for shalosh shudas. You got to do it right before the suda you're going to eat it in. And lo yafra b'koach ela b'nachas, you shouldn't stir, strongly. Rabbi Sina Abishon of Eliezer Malamed argue that since preparing tchina results in a thinner mixture, this is permitted on Shabbos. Nira shisur lash eno ela k'shmadvik gargirim zelazeh. Lash is when you cause granules to stick together, like when you add flour in water. But to mix the tchina paste with water, you don't cause parts to stick together. you're diluting it. Ein ze mishum lash. The Pnei Halacha in footnote 33 says it used the crisscross strokes to mix the tchina. Okay. Preparing pudding in jello on Shabbat. Instant pudding in jello does not require any kneading. You just add water, and then the food is ready to eat. Can you prepare these foods on Shabbat by adding water? Rav Moshe Feinstein writes that preparing a thick mixture of this nature is prohibited on Shabbos, whereas preparing a thin mixture is permitted if done with a shinui, as discussed above. Hayim mutar lachin tabchi tapuchei adama, instant mashed potatoes, me'avka nemasa, or pudding, instant patita, right? All pudding, ma'avka nemasa. This is, you have powder and you're adding water to it. Instant pudding. By adding, I guess normally the water was in the kli first and you added the powder. That's the normal way of doing it. Here they're saying put the powder in and place the water after the powder and shinui the mixture. Says Rav Moshe, you can't make the instant mashed potatoes. Pudding, if the pudding is made very thin, if you pour the water second and do the mixture, you change how you stir it, but it becomes out thick. So the pudding I'm used to is thick. So I don't know how you would make a thin pudding. Right? Pudding is not thin. Would you consider pudding thin? Pudding is thick. Okay. Rav Yosef Tzvi Rimon follows Rav Moshe. That's a good move. And suggests that if necessary, one can even prepare instant mashed potatoes by adding in large amount of water initially, which will create a thin mixture. So he's sort of trying to make Rav Moshe a little bit more lenient. With Varav, Rav Rimon says, Rav Moshe seemed to allow nitin lachin pudding b'Shabbos. In the Sina Samayim. It's sort of self-made. You don't have to mix anything, just adding the water. Bitnai, his condition was said pudding nozli ma'od. He had to make the pudding very liquidy. So it would be a very thin mixture. V'yeshna b'seder nesiyas hachomrim, or he should change the order of how he made the ingredients. Mitzad sheni, Rav Feinstein osur lachin pirim ma'avkas tapuchei. He prohibited making the instant mashed potatoes. Kivan shablilanu tzeres matzah below irvu. The mixture forms automatically, uvlila zui av, but it ends up being thick, so that's a problem. And therefore, b'mikra zeh lo yil shina begivu. Since it becomes thick right away on its own, changing how you knead it is not going to help. Kivan sheison netzeres odif ne'agibu. The sort of the mixture, the dough sort of forms even without kneading. V'gam lo yoil shinui b'seder nesina. Changing the order by which you add things is not going to help. Kivan sheshinu zeinem oil b'bli lava. Omnam im iefshan lachinas aperi lifnei haShabbos. If let's say you're stuck and you couldn't do it erev Shabbos, v'adam rotza lachina b'Shabbos atzman, you want to do it. Kigon shenumtza b'Shabbat makom she'ein bo aruchos mesudoros v'chadome. We're talking about maybe you had a package of instant mashed potatoes. That's the only food you had. You had no other food. So yachinas apere im arbe mayim. So what he says is just pour a lot of water in. Shia nosely, so it'll be very liquidy. Bichashev blila rako, it'll be a thin mixture. B'mikra ze yachol hakel imitenes hamayim tchila v'achar kach zavka, and you can have the water first, and then later on the powder, which is the opposite way of doing it in the weekday. Vimrotzela arvev, if he wants to stir yarvev b'shinui, dan lo b'siva l'shesi ve'eretz. So he gives you, again, I mean, who wants to eat very liquidy mashed potatoes? But I guess if you have no choice, you can do that. However, you can see Rav Rimon's leniency is not accepted. Shmir Shabbos prohibits using instant powder to make even a thin mixture. He says, Kol avkoda of choslas tavshil, any powder that you add water and it turns into a food, roy lachila deosafis mashkin aleim v'tavshil zeino nazil kimutzak, and when it such as pudding, jello, potato chips, kigon avkas pudding, jelly, shavet tubaduma, asul yishpach aleim nozlim. You can't pour water on it. He considers it lisha. Even if you make a thin mixture. So he's more machmir than Rav Rimon. Why this machmir ruling is because instant powders easily coalesce when mixed with liquid. And causing fusion in this manner is prohibited on a biblical level, even when only a thin mixture is formed. The source of this is the Rambam, quoted by the Shulchan Aruch. Hanosein zera pishton or shumshimim. If you put flax seeds or sesame seeds with kiyotz b'mayim chayev mishum lash, it right away attaches to each other, even without mixing. So based on this Rambam that the Shulchan Aruch quotes, is why Rav Neuwirth is being machmir to add even a lot of water to any powdered mixture, because it seems to be usher right away. Rav Yad Yosef permits making jello on Shabbos, as the initial mixture is liquid and it only becomes thick after a few minutes. He says subsequent solidification in the refrigerator is similar to making ice on Shabbos, which in his opinion is also permitted. We discussed this in Shiur 2 of the previous volume regarding Nolad. What does Rav Ovadia say in the Chazon Ovadia? Hachana jelly, bezek b'Shabbos, jello, instant jello. Ba'ofen shema'arvin avka b'mayim chamim b'kli sheni. You would put powder in hot water in a kli sheni, right? It's a different second vessel. V'achar shema'arvin u'bochshim oseitiv, you mix it. It dissolves. He nimchis v'nimsis b'mayim. Hamayim nasim kain made petel. It becomes similar to raspberry water. Ulachar kama dakot nasis kain marak samich. But then it becomes like a thick soup. And when you leave it, you put it in the refrigerator, it becomes solid on its own. He was asked, first of all, he says there's no lisha. Remains liquidy. Even though afterwards, shachar dakot nases something becomes solid, and klum. She'en kan yoser migrama. Uladas maranu poskim rabim grama muter legamri. According to Shulchan Aruch and other poskim, it's muter. Ulin hakfa'a b'mekarer, like using a freezer. Kvar katabnu le'el shemuter latet mayim b'mekarer kedei lakfotan. You could put water into a freezer on Shabbos to turn it into ice. What about mixing spreads? So the classic examples of lash involve mixing a liquid together with a solid powder or other solid to form a unified substance of some sort. Does the prohibition apply when one mixes two solids? The Shmir Shabbos Kilchos writes that lash applies even when mixing two solid foods that stick together, even without adding liquid. So he prohibits mixing honey and soft cheese or butter with cocoa powder. Ein Isser Lisha Elam Ken Kishetotza'ah Milishat HaChomrim. Lisha occurs that when you mix the ingredients, Tafach HaTaruvas L'gush Echad, it becomes like a solid mass. Vein Ze Mishanim Blila Zu Tiyutzai Deo Safat Nozlim Ala Chomer. It doesn't require that you always have to add liquid, or that it's natural moisture. That we'll see a case, even two substances, one dry and one liquid. Or he says, there's no liquid in any of the things. It's just through their nature. In contrast, Rav Moshe, in Igros Moshe, the sources below, writes that Lash does not apply to mixing cream with cottage cheese. Like people used to mix sour cream and cottage cheese. That's not a problem. The Melachos Shabbos questions the reasoning of those who are stringent in this regard, as the known examples of Lash only causing previously non-cohesive substances to fuse together. These are already cohesed, right? Why should this be prohibited? We saw the prohibition only when you add liquid, or something that sticks to flour, or other things that are separated, that the liquid makes like one gush. Why? Where do we see shall stay isos asher ein bem kibbutz chalokim klal? What about eggplant salad? Is considered a thick mixture, and therefore should not be made on Shabbos. However, I'm trying to think. My grandmother, Alea Shalom, came home from the shtibel every Shabbos, and they made tzvibel metayer.
Eggplant, not eggs.
I understand, but I'm just thinking. So there they took hard-boiled eggs, and they just chopped it up, and they add some onions to it. Okay, there's no lush there. Okay.
But they added mayonnaise. A little mayonnaise. What happens if you add a little mayonnaise?
No, she added oil. She added some
Oil.
Polish,
The oil, yeah, we added. Did you add mayonnaise?
always. We never had oil.
No,
had
we
mayonnaise.
used the oil.
Must have gone around.
Oil,
Mario, that we were Galicianers.
yeah.
What did the Litvaks do, Jacob?
Great poupon.
Oil. I only know oil.
Oil.
Mary-
Well, the oil, the chora, could have been an issue then. It's not a powder. Well, we'll see. Egg salad. It's coming up. Okay, they're going to discuss it. Chopped liver. They took the liver. That was a solid. And there was also onions in there. I think
And eggs also,
they used oil there, right? There was some
eggs
oil.
inside of chocolate.
There was
and
some
eggs.
eggs.
Eggs, like chocolate.
Okay.
Hmm,
So I don't know why they're talking about eggplant salad.
That's
What?
Israeli, that's like baba ganoush.
Baba
Baba
ganoush.
ganoush.
Baba ganoush. Okay. Is considered a thick mixture and should not be made on Shabbos. However, the Melachos Shabbos writes that if oil separates and rises to the top, one may mix it again on Shabbos, meaning you made it Friday, and then you come to it and the oil has risen, then you can mix it. Salat chatzilim asoy mechatzilim merusakim, chopped eggplant, mu'uravim b'chometz, mixed with vinegar, or b'shemen, or with oil, or b'mayonnaise, ein lachino b'Shabbos, because of this problem of lash. The problem of lash is everywhere. There's a lot of lash issues. But if it was prepared on Friday, Shabbat safal gav shemen, you see that the oil is risen, you can mix it. I'm not sure why not. The rationale, let me see, does he give? Yeah. The rationale behind this lynch could be the fact that mixing liquid back into a solid mixture only makes the mixture thinner. In addition, the salad does not undergo any inherent change when mixing the oil, as the oil will separate again if left to do so. Okay? Let's get to our questions. Vegetable salad, tuna, and egg salad. We saw above in source 10 that the Mishnah Berurah permits preparing lettuce together with liquid if the pieces of lettuce remain large and distinct. This is not defined as a mixture. So, mistama, you have pieces of lettuce and you add, salad dressing. That's not a problem. The Mishnah Berurah agrees, based on the Taz, that if the pieces are small and the liquid causes them to form one unified mixture, one must employ shinui. But the salads that we eat don't become one mixture, Susie. Israeli salad remains separate.
And we said we're already gonna make it bigger pieces.
Well, we said you have to make, that was a different issue. That was, did we say toichet? That was the previous problem. No, that was, we did trina, right? Toichet. That was like a grinding problem.
We have to make big pieces.
So you have to make bigger pieces, make it too small. It's like you've grinded something. Rav Simcha Bunim Kon permits preparing a vegetable salad for the same reason. Again, they're so vague, they don't really tell you what they're making when you vegetable salad. I guess it's like our lettuce, right? Permissible to mix a vegetable salad using oil, vinegar, or mayonnaise, as long as the pieces are large enough that they are recognized individually and are not perceived as one body. Rav Ribit writes that one may prepare coleslaw and potato salad normally for the same reason. So does Rav Tzvi Rimon. Okay? However, Rav Kohn notes that one must prepare tuna salad with mayonnaise using a shinui if it's finely chopped, and egg salad made with oil should preferably be prepared before Shabbat. Chopped egg or tuna may be combined with mayonnaise in the usual order, right? Because it's not, mayonnaise itself is like a solid, it's not a liquid. However, it must be mixed with crisscross strokes. Mixing with a knife or with the handle of utensil is not permitted. The same holds true when adding egg or tuna, or when mixing vegetable bits into a completed salad. The new pieces may be mixed only in a crisscross fashion. An egg salad in which oil is used as the binder should preferably be prepared before Shabbos. If this is not possible, or in case of necessity, one may make it on Shabbos by adding together the ingredients in the reverse order and mixing with crisscross strokes. Okay. And here we have, at the end, the various summaries, and that's, I'm going to stop here today. And then we're going to talk next week, hachana, of preparing food, salting food, spreading food, measuring. Okay. Any questions, comments, or I wrote?
I think with the mixing the mayonnaise, I've seen it made. You have to beat it pretty fast and quick, otherwise it becomes like something disgusting. So when they say mix it slow, I don't think that works.
That is practical.
Exactly.
It's not practical.
You can't really make it. It's not doable.
Your Julia
No.
Child showed me.
You're a
How many
chef.
people make their own mayonnaise?